What I like about this one today is it's not complicated. It's the audio by Van Alstine set 120 control amplifier, which is basically an integrated amp, but they call it a control amplifier, and I'll get to that soon enough. But let's get to the basics right away. It is a 60 watt per channel into 8 ohm design, class AB, and is also said to put 120 watts per channel into 4 ohm loads. It is built and designed and built in Woodbury, Minnesota. So this company's got some roots, but a lot of you may have never even heard of Van Alstine. It's one of those under the radar brands that I'm kind of drawn to, because there's a realness to this company that I really like. There's no pretension. And by the way, they don't, here's some quirkiness, they don't list their specifications other than the power output to 60 watts per channel. They say if you have a question about the specs, you can just call them and ask them, because yes, a human being is there to answer questions. Sometimes it's Frank Van Alstine himself. So I like it for that. And just using it is a pleasure. It's a volume control, an input selector, and a headphone jack on the front panel. Oh, and by the way, when you plug in the headphones, it doesn't mute the speaker level output. To do that, strangely, you have to reach around, you do a reach around to the back panel where there is a switch to turn off the speaker output so you can just listen to your headphones. It's quirky, but in practice, it's no biggie. There is no remote control. That's another one that's not typical. But in practice, I got up and I changed the volume, or I changed the input selector. It's not that hard. But that could be a deal breaker for some people. And if that's a deal breaker for you, I understand. I truly do. Oh, by the way, before we get any further, there will be an Audiophiliac viewer system of the day at the conclusion of today's episode. So what else can I tell you? Well, the knob feel, and this the overall build quality, feels very solid, but it's not a blingy, thick faceplate, kind of design. No, it's very, Spartan, really. It only comes with a black faceplate. There's no silver option. It's just straight ahead, and I love it for that. Here's a picture of the insides. Again, it's nicely done, big chunky toroidal transformer, very straight ahead design. Oh, there are some numbers to share. First, the price. The price is $1,199. Audio by Van Alstine sells direct with a 30-day home trial period and a 3-year warranty. The other thing I want to share with you right away is that I go way back with this company. My first power amp, when I got into separates, my first power amp was a Van Alstine amp. I used it with an AGI 511 preamp. But up to that point, I was a receiver kind of guy, and my receiver at that time was one of those big Pioneers. It might have been an SX 1080. I think that's what it was. It was one of the really big, really heavy ones. The leap, though, going from the Pioneer receiver to the AGI preamp and the Van Alstine power amp over my speakers, which I'm pretty sure at that moment in time were the Freed speakers. I can't remember the model. But anyway, it was an ear-opening experience to go from that Pioneer receiver to the separates, because the separate just had, first of all, more dynamic slam. It just kicked so much harder. It had just more life to the sound. And this is early 1980s, to give you the time period. But it was really exciting, and I definitely never looked back and ever wanted to buy a receiver ever again for my personal use. So getting into separates with those two, yeah, it definitely changed the course of my audio trajectory. Oh, and by the way, why is this not called an integrated amplifier? Well, because it doesn't have a preamplifier. It's not a preamplifier and a power amplifier in one chassis, which is what an integrated amplifier is. This is a high gain amplifier with a passive preamp. meaning a volume control and an input selector. So it's a difference with it, that has some meaning to some people, but in practice, in everyday use, you use it like you would an integrated amplifier. Anyway, so the rest of the system for this review, I had 3 speakers to use with it, and most of the time it was the KEF LS50 Meta, which I use for these kinds of reviews as my reference, to put it that way. I had that, and I had this little Riga speaker called the Kite that I'm going to review very shortly. And for contrast to the LS50, a set of Klipsch RP600Ms, the horn speakers. And the RP600M and the LS50 sound like that. They're going in completely different directions. But it's a good test to see what I'm hearing from an amplifier. So for my listening sessions, just to get down to serious business, I used Holly Cole's Temptation CD. Now, this record is basically her doing Tom Waits songs. It's all Tom Waits songs. And I played this CD, this recording, hundreds and hundreds of times, probably over 1,000 times. I've heard it on so many systems. And I actually use it in almost every review I do. I just don't tell you about it each time I use it, but it's one of my all-time favorite classics. And it gets right to the heart of the matter really, really quickly. And it can sound sort of digital and hard on some systems, but not here. No, the combination of the LS50 and the Set 120 was really good. Holly Cole's vocals were just all there. The bass on this recording is big, really big, big and fat. And it can sometimes, depending on the system, sound out of control or bloated or thick or something. Not here. It sounded right on the money. And little tiny details, like in the bells, the little percussive accents that are in there, they were really, really pure sounding. So for contrast, I picked a recording that I rarely listen to, and it's U2's Achtung Baby. And it's produced by Brian Eno, one of my all-time favorites, and Daniel Lanois together. I pumped that puppy up, and with the LS50s still, and just kind of reveled in the density of those mixes, the rough edges of the guitars, and just the distortion, the intentional distortion that Eno puts in these things. And it was freaking great. So, to do a comparison, I pulled out, and I've been using this a lot lately for comparisons of amplifiers, is the Schiit Jotunheim 2 mated with the Schiit Agir. It's kind of a Schiit Sandwich, think of it that way, right? And that pairing kind of took things down a notch. It seemed smaller, flatter sounding, really nice, no doubt about it, but maybe the word is congested by comparison to the Set 120. It just kind of smoothed over those edges that were part of the sound that I wanted to hear. And then for even more contrast, I go back to the Set 120 and I pop in the Klipsch RP600Ms, which are so much livelier sounding than the LS50 Metas. They just just go, wow, there it is, big, dynamic, alive sound. And the LS50s can sound smaller and more tapped down by comparison to the RP600M. And I cranked up Achtung Baby with that setup, and it was a blast. I mean, it had that live sound. So basically what I'm saying here is that the Set 120 is, it tells you what's going on in the recording, but it also has a different sound with every speaker you hook it up to. For a little detour, I pulled out some headphones to try out the Set 120's headphone amplifying abilities. Back with Holly Cole, and I'm playing the Grado Hemp headphone and also the Audeze LCD 2XC closeback Audeze headphone. And those little percussive details in the Holly Cole recording were so pure and so airy, and the sound staging was very specific, very, very nice. This headphone amplifier that's part of the Set 120 is definitely above average in its abilities to really excel with different headphones. I tried some other headphones, but it's definitely above average. For if you're into headphones and you're really going to use that headphone jack, this is going to make a nice pairing for you. So I love turning you guys on to music that you might have missed. And this one, which I missed for a long time, Toots in Memphis. That's Toots from Toots and the Maytals. And he's basically channeling Otis Redding and Al Green. It's a very Memphis soul recording, but a really good recording. A little dry for me. There's not a lot of big openness to it, but it's dynamic. It's a very dynamic recording. The horns are fantastic. But Toots's vocals, man, when he's doing his Otis Redding thing, it's, whoa, is he amazing. But he's not trying to just mimic Otis or Otis's recordings, because it's kind of like melding soul with reggae. Because look at the players. I'll put up the musicians that are playing on this session, and it's like some of the greatest are right there. And that's what comes through. That's what makes this he's not just mimicking Otis and Al Green. No, he's taking it to this other space. So it's above average recording, just a little dry for meaning. It doesn't have a lot of wetness and reverb and space to it. But it's got that energy. You really feel him pouring himself into that microphone. You really hear Toots just reveling in this. He is having a blast making this record, and you will feel it. You will feel it if you're using a system as good as, well, the RP600 or the LS50 with the Set 120. So now it's time to do so Steve, what did you really think portion of this review? Well, I liked it a lot, but I'm not one that needs bling or even a remote or be dazzled by features. If you are that kind of audiophile, you just want something really simple that sounds good, that if you care about it, is made in the USA by a real company that offers a real warranty, a company you can actually call on their telephone and talk to people there. If that's important to you, but just one that's like really transparent, really cuts through the muck and just sounds right, the Set 120 control amplifier is definitely worth checking out. Definitely. And now it is that time. It is time for the Audiophiliac Viewer System of the Day. This is Doug's system. He is in Kansas City, Missouri. There's a lot to cover here. We'll start with Thorin's TD-125 Mark II turntable with a Stanton 681 EE cartridge, TAC 1230 reel-to-reel, DBX DX5. The digital source is a custom PC computer. The DAC is a PS Audio gain cell. There's an electronic crossover, a Behringer CX3400, Edelweiss 3-tube power amp. Those 811 Altec horns are sitting above custom-built two-way lower cabinets. There's a Crown DC-150A Series 2 amp for just the 12-inch mid-range driver, Carver M200Ts for the 15-inch subwoofers, Carver C4000T control console with sonic holography, and a Crown DC-150A power amp to drive the Tecton 210 Perfect Set speakers. There's a variety of configurations in the way he uses this system, but most of the time it's just the Tectons with the 15-inch subwoofers. But sometimes he runs all the speakers together for loud rock and full orchestral music. Amazing as it is, Doug isn't finished, but he thinks of this as a very cool test bed for all kinds of experiments. Oh, and then there's a picture of Doug listening to his reel-to-reel after refurbing it with some nice, affordable Audio-Technica headphones. Yikes, that's amazing, Doug. Okay, we are back, and my name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the Audiophiliac. Well, if you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please join us. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much for doing so. But if you're still, just haven't done it yet, this is the time to do it. We're on a surge, a slow motion surge to 200,000 subscribers, and it would be great to have you aboard. aboard the train for that special event that will happen soon. Speaking of special, why don't you check out my Patreon, which can be found at patreon.com/audiophiliac. And Patreon now accepts payments in dollars, pounds, and euros. But now I can say my work here is at last complete. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.